another week with me, Susie Pettit, your certified life and parent coach. And I have a guest on the show today, Christine Oakfield, and we have a wonderfully robust conversation on a whole bunch of topics that you are sure to find something here for you that will impact you in your life, no matter where you are on your journey. I had her on the show to talk about empty nest, and we did talk about empty nest. We also talked about parenting teens. We talked about leading up to empty nest and the best way to parent. And we talked about codependency. We talked about midlife and redefining ourselves. So it's all in here. Listen in, grab the show notes when you're done. We have some fun links in there. And ultimately, warriors, it's all about really, I find it comes down to two things. One, letting yourself have the experience you're having, like letting yourself feel what you're feeling without the judgment from yourself that you should or shouldn't be feeling it this way, or it should or shouldn't be different, etc. And paired with you be you. The more we dig into finding out who we are, what supports us, what lights us up, what desires we have, who we are as a person, the better it serves everyone. And yes, that is including your children. Okay. So that's what we're about in the Love Your Life show. I love bringing you guests and experts who can help us with certain stages that we're going through, like empty nest or launching our kids. And I promise you, this one, listen in for the ways that you can see possibly areas of your life where you could practice one of those two skills. One, letting yourself feel what you're feeling without judging yourself. That's what I see very quickly for us all, myself included. And two, who am I? What do I want? What does my next chapter hold? What is my next, getting into some of that, learning about you. Christine Oakfield she's called the Empty Nest Coach, aka Coach Christine. And she is just masterful at helping people go from feeling some sort of freaking out about the empty nest years to feeling freaking awesome. Okay, she has her own podcast, which I will link in the show notes, and she supports parents a lot at all stages of their journey. So I am thrilled to have her on the show, and let's welcome her in. Hello, warriors, and let's welcome Christine to the Life Show.
Hello. Hi, Susie. Hi, warriors.
Hello. I am so glad to have you on the show today. I love how you help parents who are already in the empty nest stage, and then you say you help those nervously approaching it, and that you help parents go from freaking out to feeling freaking awesome. And that is what we're all about here on the show. Can you tell me a little bit about how you do this? This show will be airing right around the time when many parents are sending their kids off to school. And if they are not sending their kids off to school and they still have kids that are, in the house, maybe age 10 to 17, they're witnessing their friends doing that. And so they're thinking about it, possibly feeling nervous, freaked out.
Yes, there are so many things that can trigger it, really. It's, whether it's your first kid or fifth kid, it's all different every time somebody leaves the house. I think that's the one dynamic I always try to remind parents, that even if it's not your last child, it's your first child, that changes the family dynamic that's at home. And every time they come back, it changes it a little too. So just to be aware of that fact is you're already ahead of where I was when I started.
Yeah.
To be aware of the fact that things are going to change. Your kid, when they come home, are probably going to be a little different. So you have this fresh opportunity to get to reacquaint yourself with your child every time they come back. And if you have that mentality going in, it helps. And then also know that your emotions are probably going to jump all over the place, and that's okay. They are more than likely not going to show up the way you think, just like anything else in life. The empty nest years, we all have a great plan for them, just like we have for, our teenage years and our 20s and our 30s. And I think for 99% of us, it doesn't turn out the way we had pictured. And that isn't always a bad thing. It's just adjusting to the fact that it's going to be different. And you've got this. You're freaking amazing. You got this far in life. You've raised kids. You're going to have some sadness, maybe. Some people don't. Either way, it's okay. And the way your friend reacts to it and the way you're handling it may be totally different, and it's okay for both of you.
Yeah.
With your partner, your partner may have a totally different version of this, and they might be super excited to have you to themselves. And you may be like, no.
I am so sad.
So being patient with each other and everyone in the house is the biggest thing, really. And just to remember how freaking amazing you are and you've got this.
Yeah, so like everything you're saying, I'm like, yes to mindset. I appreciate how much you help with mindset. Just I want to go back to the very first thing you said about how the household changes and it changes the dynamic and it changes, your kid changes. I know my listeners, I think that in itself is going to bring a wave of fear over like them, and your work with mindset is where I'd like some help here, because that hearing like, oh my God, it's gonna change. Like, what does that mean? And then it's gonna change how they show up with friends and all of that. Like, help us.
Yeah, you and I know are on the same page. Like mindset is really everything, but it's really hard when you're in the midst of this to jump to, oh, this is great. I'm going to have a new life. I'm going to feel amazing. I don't expect anybody to do that.
Mhm.
I expect you to have emotions and to be okay with them. So the best place to start, if you're one of those who are really struggling with it, is to catch your thoughts. If you're listening to Susie's show, you're already aware of catching your thoughts and paying attention. And when you catch an emotion burst, you're probably going to feel your emotion first. If you can tune into the emotion and notice what thoughts are going on, say, it's okay. I'm having this emotion now. I miss my kid, and that's okay. Is really, if you just add, and that's okay to the end of it, it's a really good starting point, because first you have to be okay with the fact that you're having the thoughts and feelings before you can get to where you're going to start to progress into feeling amazing, which is a little down the line.
For sure. For sure. I also love, I'm just looking, I had a quote of yours here that says, the more emotionally positive you are towards this new beginning, the more it will help ease your child's mind. And then I just want to add, and our mind. And I think that's when, if a listener is feeling that anxiety, whether your kid is, in eighth grade or a senior or, wherever they are in this journey of like, oh my gosh, it's going to change. I think to keep an eye and a pulse on like, yes, and that's what we want. Like,
Absolutely.
like just
Yes.
that this is hard and it is hard and it is challenging, and yet like we actually want this. We want the kid to launch. It's sort of like, I mean, I'm 51 now, and it's like, oh my God, like I'm gonna get more wrinkles as I get older, and my maybe I won't be as flexible. It's like, yeah, and I want to keep aging. Thank you very much. Like this.
Yes.
It's sort of
I know. I
like
call them badges of honor, the wrinkles. Yes.
positive thing. Like, what's the alternative? They're like, I don't have, I don't age, so that's not what I want. And the alternative is having our kid. I know parents are not wishing for this. Like, I know, I just want them at home, not launching and never becoming independent adults.
And it's interesting because now this generation is very different than what we had. So there are a lot more children home, and that's okay too. That's the other thing, is I think we were, at least I'm 52, so I'm in the same generation of, parents are like, you get out of the house, get out and do your own life. And I got to do that. But also when I graduated from college, it was very easy to have a career. And our kids don't have that. So I also say that, when I say the empty nesters may not look the way you thought, they might come home.
Yeah, there's the boomerang of it. Right.
And that's okay too.
Yeah.
As long as, and that's what's really important, is if you've done the work to know who you are, to clear out your thoughts, to have the peace, to be able to have conversations with your kids, to show them that you're processing through your own emotions and you can have a life, then you get to show up very differently together, whether it's in the same house or not. And that's always my goal, is the goal long term is for you to become kind of like a coach more to your kids than this parental role where the change is happening. It gets really fun when you have this different relationship. And each time you come together, you get to learn more about each other and, what's comfortable for each of you, and you respect that. And it's fun. There was something I wanted to say about the transition too, is also, yes, getting to this point, this is what we want them to do. And also, some parents don't get the privilege of getting here. So you take that in as, some kids don't get to watch their kids. Some parents don't get to watch their kids grow up and get to this stage. So, it is totally a privilege. We have done so much work to get here. And I also like to remind parents that there are days where for some of us, it was preschool. We thought if we picked the wrong preschool, the rest of their life was going to, the whole trajectory was going to be bad, or if they weren't walking by a certain day and all these things. And we made it. We got this far. It's taken us 18 plus years to get comfortable with where we are right now. And, while they were slowly pulling away, there's going to be this Band-Aid moment. And be really patient with yourself when the moments show up where you're just, this is a lot, this is too much, because you need to give yourself grace to process this it's a huge change. Basically, if you don't know who you are and your whole identity is in, or even part of your identity is in being a parent, it's a big change.
I mean, it's a big change.
It's a fun change, though, too. Once you get to the other side,
is to just I don't want listeners to take this like, oh, this is a good thing, and then they start beating themselves up because we don't have a sort of big shame trigger like we're doing this wrong. But it's more like if you've done anything for even 10 years, moving and doing something different is going to feel different to your system.
Exactly.
So that's what we're looking at, is that like this sort of, it's the both and of life. This
it is.
Of course it feels uncomfortable, and yes, we want them to do that. So I just, that has been my experience with empty nesting, is really trying so hard to be compassionate with myself and let myself feel the feelings I'm feeling that, you spoke to earlier, to let myself feel the sad, or before the sort of judgment comes in. It's like, well, you shouldn't be feeling the sad because you want your kid to go to college. It's like, no, and I'm still feeling sad because I'm missing the routine, or I'm missing, the dirty shoes around the house, or I'm missing needing to buy 2 cartons of eggs instead of just 6 eggs.
It's the strangest things that get us.
Right. And the brain has a really hard time with that, like holding 2 things through at once. And so I just want to encourage listeners to just be kind with themselves on the journey. What I want to speak to, I love where you brought up the preschool, because that is so helpful that I can look back and I can look like my decision for where the boys were going to preschool. And it was my decision. Like my husband was having, like, I was like, no, this is me as a mother, like, hear me roar. That was so important to me. And I can now look back with perspective and be like they probably would have done well at any of those Arlington.
Right.
Like, did it really matter? I want to bring that to some of our parents now in this sort of, if they are in that like lead way up to emptiness, and also if they are in the full empty nest, because this is the part of parenting where I see parents have the most success, when they can back out and be more detached from the decisions our kids are making, whether it is if they continue on with the travel volleyball or the band, or or if it's which college they decide to go to, or which major they decide to major in, that ultimately in 10, 20 years, us looking back at what they chose, it's not going to be as important as us maintaining a safe and loving relationship for them.
Reach, yes.
Can you speak a little more about that?
Absolutely. The best thing we can do for our kids, I think this is a little tough love to people, in that it's so much easier to focus on our kids than to look at ourselves and to spend time with ourselves alone. So in our discomfort, it's easy to want to focus on fixing things for our kids rather than, doing our own internal work and processing through our feelings and all of that. So that's where that patience and love and kindness to yourself is really important, and to get comfortable in doing that. When we jump in for our kids, and especially by the time they're, emerging adults and ready to go on their own, there's so much they should be doing on their own. And the more we do for them, the less we give them the opportunity to discover who they are. They have no idea who they are if we always jump in. They're not comfortable making decisions. So many 20-year-olds are afraid to go to the doctor, and because their parents go with them, and, all these things that they need help with. And if you haven't done it up until then, it makes sense to me. So it's really great for those who are still have your kids at home to be able to let them launch a little early while you're there physically, to have their back if they feel uncomfortable, and let them discover who they are. But without you doing the work for yourself, it's hard to back off and give them the space.
Yeah. And I just want to put a pin on that, and just listeners, what she means by that, you doing the work by yourself, means that if your kid is deciding whether to continue with the travel volleyball or not, or continue with the band or not, your brain is like, but what if, what if they need it? What if they're filling out their college application and they feel disappointment? Or we want you to be able to feel the disappointment, or you're creating anxiety for yourself thinking about them feeling disappointment. That's the work for you to do on your own. You feeling stressed about being stressed, or you feeling, stressed about them feeling disappointed, and just letting yourself feel that. Yes, I do.
Yeah.
That is okay. And that is hard. And that is part of it. And they need to feel stress to, become those launching adults. And they need to, them saying I'm going to make a microwave pizza. And you're like, okay, instead of jumping in and being like, well, make sure you put the cardboard under it and make sure that you do that. It's just, where can you sort of back out and do your own emotional work? That's just your nerves, your anxiety. What's going to happen? Maybe their pizza will be totally soggy and hard, or totally hard. But what I find is that the consequences now, when they're 10 to 25, are much less. You have a soggy pizza versus them
100%.
learning those life skills when they're older. Yeah, I really appreciate that.
It's so much fun to see them try things and gain the confidence and let them make their decisions. And, I have clients who I've been able to watch them let their kids really lead the college process for those who are going to college. And college isn't for everyone either. But to see the difference in when they start of, I think we're going to go to this school, this school, this school, and maybe at school 2, you can start to see the kids lead it more. And the relationship grows through watching that and seeing that, sports maybe not all that important for them. And that's just what they did then. And speaking, total side note with sports, if you're a parent who's had the sports parents group through high school and stuff, that's a whole nother thing to just keep in mind that might change too afterwards. And there's a little bit of a loss there. So more patience and love for yourself, really.
Yeah. So I think I want to sort of move on to what you're talking about, the compassion part. But before I do, I just want to I love leaving listeners with the action steps. So if your kids are still in the house, look for tasks, small things that you can start turning over to them. And it's when I interviewed Julia Driscott Hames, I'm totally messing up her name. She wrote the book, How to Raise an Adult. And she speaks of sort of using the medical model. And if they're still in your house, that's a wonderful thing to do. I know, I know a lot of us worry about our kids and tech use. Instead of us telling them and being the dictator and saying you can only use it for, a certain amount of time. I know one thing that worked well for me, and it goes along with what you were saying and being more of a coach, is asking my kids, hey, how'd you feel about your tech use this weekend? Asking. And then sometimes my son would be like, totally fine, I'm good. And I'm in my head yeah, you so were not, but I keep my mouth shut. Other times he's like, yeah, it was totally out of control. And then we came together and we're like, well, what do you think went on? And he's like, well, I ignored my alarm that told me to, go to the gym, or so it's just looking at these opportunities to come together. Again, you're looking to build a relationship, not always be the dictator, or that your kid has to do something to make mom happy. So thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you for that. So for the people who, they might now be like, holy shit, my kid is going off to school and I still make their microwave pizza. What do I do?
They're going to figure it out. That's really. I like to use the analogy that what's outside of your fence. In my analogy, your mind's like a house and you have thought box deliveries. The thought deliveries come in, and then there's a fence around your yard. And that fence is things you can't control. Things that aren't yours to deal with. And what are the things, when your kid's out of the house, say they're in Virginia and you're in I don't know, Texas, and they're making microwave pizza, they're going to figure it out. I mean, there's other people there. They're going to figure the things out. And when they need to reach out to you, they will, or they won't. But either way, you get to manage the stuff inside your fence, the things you can control, and figuring out what things are outside of your fence, and to be like, okay, I can let that go. And trust, you know your kid. They're not dumb. They've gotten this far in life. They have had your guidance. They're going to do okay. And they're going to fail too. And that's okay, because we learn from that.
So
now,
yeah,
having their back when that happens is so much more important. Like can you imagine? Okay, they burned the microwave pizza. How did that go? Did anything funny happen with that? Tell me the story. Like, suddenly you have stories that you can share that are way more interesting than I told you how to make microwave pizza.
Yeah, again, the relationship building, and they do figure it out. Like I just remember, I mean, that's how I figured out how to microwave rice, because I can remember in college I'd eat so much hard rice, and I was like, what is the deal here? Like, your Chinese white rice was always crunchy, and it's like, I figured it out. So it's like, yeah, our kids are maybe not dumb, but they also are dumb in ways, and then that's how you learn. It's like, okay.
Well, true. And we could think of our own lives, right? How many things I went out knowing?
Yeah.
Absolutely nothing. Some days I'm like, how was I alive? How did I manage? But somehow we do. We figure things out.
Yeah, and
we learn
that part of the like, oh my God, how did I manage that? Sometimes parents of this generation, we get into that helicopter where we're like, okay, we don't want them to have that struggle. And that's where you were saying, back out. That's not your fence. They need that experience. In one of your articles that I read, you speak of the importance, or the helpfulness of having a conversation with kids about boundaries and expectations around like contact when they do leave, because that's just reminded me. I mean, I do know there are some parents who probably would get a call like, oh my God, Mom, I burnt the pizza. What do I do? And it's like that, like, you should not be their first call. Because I saw my mom when I was eating crunchy rice. Like, I
think, and that's for everybody to navigate too, right? Because some of us will miss them so much that they will call and they'll pick up every moment. And that's really, it's all okay. It's all going to work out. We're going to figure it out. We're going to grow together or apart and then come together. Just know that you've got it. If you spend too much time answering the phone calls and the texts, you can work on that next year. If you're happy and they're happy, there's no right or wrong. There's so much of this world, which is, okay, outside of your fence, people in the outside world saying you shouldn't text your kids. You should text your kids. You should tell them about tech. You shouldn't trust your own. And that's where, if you haven't like cleaned out your thoughts and know who you are and what your boundaries are, it's hard to know what kind of relationship you want with your kid. And it's hard for your kid to know what they want if they have mom telling them everything. So you figure out they figure out them long term. This isn't like an overnight thing. And then you start to trust yourselves without worrying about what everyone outside your fence is rattling on about.
Yeah, I really appreciate that like, what's best for you. You said a couple things there that were really interesting. You said like, if it works for you too. And that's where I'm always calling on parents to be the adult. Your child is not your therapist. So if you are struggling, which you will be, with empty nest feelings, I mean, I want you to be feeling like, I want you to be sad and upset, because that means that you loved your kid and you enjoyed your time. And if you're not feeling sad and upset, chances are you're probably doing something to numb that sad and upset. So that like, that's sad and upset, you lean on people like Christine, you come to my membership, like we are there. We're doing this with you. We want you to feel sad and upset, but we don't want you putting that on your kid. So there is some, and so one of the things you said is like, if it's good for both of us. And that's where just keeping that, when you're doing your work on your side, on your own emotions, and then able to sort of witness, like, is this the best thing for my daughter to be texting me at 2 a.m, and is this the best thing for me to be crying on the phone about how much I miss her, and what does she do? Like, any sort of awareness and observation there is helpful. While also what I appreciate about your work is you sort of highlight the intentional piece. Like all our families are going to do it differently. There's going to be a different thing for all of us but I am always going to argue some sort of pre-thought, pre-thinking, intentionality, getting together with your kid and being like, so how often do you think will be reasonable to call and text? And what do you think about that?
100%, 100%. And the emotions, a couple things you said, or talk about the emotions and being sad. So the overriding thing that I've kind of labeled with emotions is bittersweet for the empty nest, because you're so happy for your kid or that you've made it this far, but you also have all these competing emotions. So you have that going on. And then the sadness is if you're feeling like you really have a lot of sadness and your children are impacted, they're going to see you cry. I think it is very valid to have a conversation with them and say, look, I am so excited for you. I'm going to have a lot of emotions and I need to express them and let them out. I'm okay. I'm going to be okay. But just know that sometimes I'm going to have to close the door and go cry. I'm okay. I'm just getting through it because I'm going to miss you.
Yeah.
And having that conversation and them seeing you process emotions is so healthy too.
Well, especially also if they're a younger sibling. So that's one of the things I noticed that, when my oldest did go up and then me sharing with the younger two, because it's very alarming for a kid to see a parent crying. And what I do is model that it's okay. Emotions are fine. And actually crying is a really reasonable and healthy way to process emotions, as is, maybe I'm going to go for a run, but I feel sad. So I definitely, that would be one thing for parents to do, is to model that emotions. We don't want to put it on our kid. And so one thing I want to highlight that you just said is you said, I'm okay. That you don't need to fix it. You don't need to call me. It's not theirs to fix. It's modeling that you are a healthy, autonomous adult. It's I'm having a feeling because I love you, or I'm having a feeling because I love your mother and I'm feeling sad that he's not here. And then I found that when I was doing that with my kids, it gave them a chance to have their sort of, two-sided emotions too. They're thrilled that they don't have to share a bathroom with their brother anymore. But then they're sad because they don't have someone to always go kick the ball around. And it's
absolutely,
both of that.
100%. And that's the other thing is, since you're mentioning the siblings, when someone leaves the house, keep in mind that even the siblings, it impacts the siblings a lot. It impacts the pets even. The pets might be really close to that.
Where are they? Right.
Yeah. So the dynamic, knowing that you're all processing emotions and all differently, having patience for yourself and each other is really helpful. Mm-hmm. And knowing you're all amazing, you've all got this. It's good stuff.
Right. It's that clear, concise communication. Bring it out. And it's a little hard, and there's nothing's gone wrong here. So that nothing's gone wrong here again. It's nothing's gone wrong here. They've gone up to school. This is what we want, and this is great. And so a couple of things I'm hearing you say that are sort of coming out is making sure, as the adult and the parent, that you have support and you have, that you're giving yourself time to have your emotional experience, whether it is, with the coach or in a group, and also just your own practice. Are there certain things that you suggest people do when they're feeling really sad and, their kid just left, or the sadness, I feel it will be there.
You'll have your sadness, so that you get to know yourself well enough where you need to go just, have a glass of wine or get Ben and Jerry's and watch a sad movie. Sometimes you have to do that. It's all good. And then you feel better. I talk about having a toolbox, and it's a pretend one, and then the top of your toolbox is all the things that you've noticed kind of get you in the zone of sorts, you enjoy, you just love it. It's a distraction, but a conscious distraction versus a just numbing of watching Netflix for 10 hours. You can sit down and be like, I love this Netflix show, watch it consciously, enjoy it, and not feel guilty about it versus, just sitting down and being sad about it. So I encourage people to just pay attention to the things that bring them joy. And if they can't think of anything, sometimes that happens. They're so involved in their kids' lives or, work, kids, life is busy. It's hard to find things for yourself. Then just work backwards in your life to things that have brought you joy. or try things.
Mhm.
I love nature. You're going to find me in nature all the time. It keeps me happy. There's a little bird feeder on my windowsill, those kinds of things. You find the things for you. I'm awful at crocheting, but that's a nice little thing for me to do for 10 minutes and zone out. So figuring out all the things and just trying things. It's a really good time to try new things too.
Yeah, well, and what's so neat is with all the longevity studies and everything, and they're finding that we have far more years ahead of us than we had behind us. When we look back, talking about looking back at preschool, looking back at the time our kids were in our house, it really is a blip. So it can feel incredibly overwhelming and stressful and sad to be like, oh my God, like that part of me, that identity is gone, might be a word that comes to people's mind. But I just like to look at, again, like looking at yes, and you have all this other time. And one thing that I've heard you say is that you weren't done parenting. It's just parenting is different. You parent in a different
Absolutely.
way. So
Yeah.
sort of like getting behind that excitement of how I no longer I don't care if my son sleeps with his cell phone by his bed. Like, he is not in my house. Like, it's so nice to not have that worry in my head. Or I don't care if he skipped breakfast, and, I love him, and I do care if it impacts him, but like, I'm not in that minute detail in his life. What I get to do more is love and just enjoy that relationship. So,
Yes.
piece of diving into ourselves and learning, about ourselves, and seeing, what it is. Do we like crocheting? Do we like bird feeders? Do we not?
Yeah, exactly. It could be like an anger room, those rooms where they
Right.
throw things. It could be it could be roller derby. I don't know. It could be anything.
Yeah. Well,
Whatever works for
really
you.
neat time in our history, because I feel that, mindfulness has come up. Mindfulness or intentional living, or like, let's be aware of the life we're living, has come up more. Or maybe it's just the circles I'm in. But I
Right.
find that I just invite listeners, if your kid is over the age of 10, the best thing you can do is to start really getting to know yourself and your relationship. It doesn't mean that you go out the next day and get a full-time job and take on 14 hobbies, because you still have kids at home to raise. But the more time we're spending thinking about our lives and our passions, and living those, and processing through our emotions and all of that, and modeling that version of adulthood versus pouring ourselves into our kid and getting uber obsessed about whether, the middle schooler sat with her, or like what the high school girls said. It's better for our kids all around.
I was that mom too, man. I have things that you want to go back and go, oh man, past Christine.
Exactly how it was meant to be. But it's like,
Right?
let's now, the message is now. It's like, I can say this because I did that.
Yeah.
And then you're like, oh, okay. I'm not gonna like again, it's that kind of thing. Like, if we're spending more time in our heads thinking about their lives than our lives, something's going on there. And
That's what it is. Yeah. And showing up for them.
yeah,
When really, really, if you think about your own relationship with your parents, in the end, I don't know, most people, I'm thinking what you want is for you to show up and they just love you.
yeah,
Is there anything else for them to hope you're happy and they love you?
yeah,
And in the midst of all the daily things, it's hard to remember that sometimes with our kids, but really, when they have a bad day at school, maybe they do something you're embarrassed about, they still want to know you love them. And that's, if you can start working on that now, then
oh,
all the other decisions they make that are bigger, that are going to freak you out a little more, it's going to make it easier for you to still show up and be like, it's all good. I love you.
and it helps. And that's the thing, is that a listener might be like, oh my God, how do I focus on my life? It helps them so much. Exactly what you were just saying, like feeling nervous about something they did at school. Like, wow, like, why are we making that about us? The more we can get into this place of compassion for a kid, like, oh my God, that sucks that happened for you. Like, tell me about that. Versus the like, I can't believe you did that. And that we're this like judger of them. I know you and I both work with midlife women, and I know so many of the voices in their head sound
Yeah.
very much like the judgmental parents Not that their parents did anything wrong, but they're like, what are you doing, Susie? And I'm like, I don't, want that for my kids. And the best way, when we talk about easing into this empty nest period, it can start anytime, no matter the age your kids are. It can start at, 8, 10, whatever, right? And like really at 10, their development shifts. So it's a great time because they, in their development, are trying to learn more about themselves. That's a great time for you to then also have your own sort of midlife, like, okay, let me learn about myself, parallel on the path with them. And I get to just pour love on them.
It's so much more fun.
Yeah.
It really is more fun. And you don't have to go like all into tomorrow. I have to make it all about me. It starts little and build.
Yeah.
There's no right or wrong. So you do 5 minutes tomorrow, and that's 5 more than you did today. That's a win. That's a win.
For sure. And that's also that like coaching over like being that like dictator or like just better than role model where it's like, yeah, you do 5 minutes and then the next day you're back to like hyper control and helicopter parenting. I found one of the best things I could do with my kids was to just model my imperfectness and be like, oh my God, I screwed that up. Like I heard you complain about biology and I actually went and talked to the biology teacher. Like, wow, man, you could handle that. I'm sorry. Like, gee, just sort of call themselves out on that. Like, I am still human and have this desire.
We're all human. We're all going to make mistakes. And our kids are, we are. And I'm a big fan of also apologies to your kids when you mess up. I think it's important. It's a good thing to model.
Yeah.
We're all doing the best we can.
And so
in each moment.
Yeah. And I love that, like, it just taking that message, we're all doing the best we can with the empty nesting. That some days you're going to need to, sit on the couch and watch a sad movie that helps you cry out some of the tears. And some days, I had one the other day, I was just like sobbing with some playlist on just by the beach and just like, okay, this is what's meant to happen now. Just letting ourselves have the experience we're meant to have doesn't mean that we didn't journal enough, or it's like, no, you're just feeling sad.
Right.
While also then in the moments, when you are feeling more energized and open, to try to adopt Christine's mindset that this is a great thing. Like what greatness can come from this? It is, we are still parents. It looks different. Exactly what we want. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love it.
It really gets fun. It can be fun. It can be whatever we want it to be. Ultimately,
based on our lessons, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's where we're like, okay, if you think it keeps getting better and all, it will. It 100% will. And that's been, that's one of my mantras, that it just keeps getting better. Things keep working out for us. Everything's, working out exactly as it's meant to be, which just feels a lot better in my system. So,
which is what it's about, because that's what you can control. 100%. Love it.
Yeah. So where should I direct listeners who want to get more Christine and more of your support with empty nesting and just
probably the best place if you're a podcast listener is to listen wherever you listen to podcasts. It's Your Empty Nest Coach. I will say I'm about to release a new season after 5 years of season 1. I'm like, I'm going to do a new season. And then my website is emptynestsuccess.com.
I will have that all in the show notes for our listeners. And I really hope that your takeaway is that you just get the love and support that Christine has for you and that you are not alone. That is one of the things. Make sure that you have support around you. I guess one more thing I want to say is that when they do research the empty nest and sort of this change and transition, it appears to hit women harder than men. And I think there are lots of reasons for that. And I want that to be sort of maybe people's motivation to make sure that they are surrounding themselves with a group of women who are thinking positively about this period of time. If you're around other women who are like, yeah, this sucks, this is awful, and all that, you're going to feel awful. And that's not what either of us want for you. So to know it's alone and to reach out to those groups, listen to podcasts like Christine, and let's do it. Just keeps getting better.
It does. Thanks, Susie.